How far do you think Vladimir Putin is prepared to go in Ukraine?
Победы уже никогда не будет.
There will never be victory.
С Украиной сейчас ситуация такая.
With Ukraine, you can destroy it,
Завоевать нельзя.
but you can't conquer it.
Никто не знает.
Nobody knows what's going on in Vladimir Putin's head. Political experts who say Putin thinks this or is scared of that, they all
Это
charlatans.
все шарлатаны. Извинения за опоздание, простите ради бога.
This is journalist Dmitry Muratov. In the 1990s, Mr. Muratov co-founded Novaya Gazeta, a newspaper that became the flagship for independent Russian journalism. In 2021, he was joint winner of the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in safeguarding freedom of expression. Weeks later, the Kremlin launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since then, Novaya Gazeta has had its license revoked, although it still retains a presence online. As for the journalist, well, he's been designated a foreign agent, a label often used to punish and to silence critics of the Kremlin. Nonetheless, Dmitry Muratov agreed to sit down with me to share his thoughts about his country.
Пятый год так называемой специальной военной операции в Украине идет.
The so-called special military operation in Ukraine is in its fifth year. And I remember at the beginning, there were a lot of people in Russia who pretended that there was no war. Something was happening somewhere very far away, but it didn't affect them at all. What about now?
Ну, наверное, вы сами, поскольку вы находитесь в Москве.
Well, since you are in Moscow, you probably see for yourself that on the one hand, the war has become normalized, meaning people have grown used to living alongside the war, just as people get used to living next to the sea or next to a volcano. In many cities, people have got used to living alongside the war. Political and public figures have certainly done everything they can to normalize the war. Perhaps you remember, recently at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, the organizers, in other words, the government, gave a platform to the head of the patriotic TV channel Tsargrad, the well-known conservative activist Konstantin Malafeyev. He said the war would last a long time, until 2036, and that there is one good scenario for Russia there: the use of nuclear weapons.
А когда заявили о ядерной угрозе,
But when they declared the nuclear threat and when Ukrainian drones began flying all the way to major cities with populations of over 1 million, all the way to the Urals and beyond, the prospect of a nuclear war and the continuation of this war pleases no one.
не более 10-15%, как и показывают наши социологи.
Ardent supporters, those who favor continuing it, now only account for maybe 10-15% of the population, according to our pollsters. Most people, of course, want to end the fighting through negotiations.
Исследования наших социологических групп говорили о том, что да, все за мир.
And if a year ago our research groups found, yes, everyone wants peace, but on our terms, now that caveat, wanting a rapid ceasefire, but on our terms, that second bit has fallen away for most people. Everyone really just wants a ceasefire.
Значит ли это, что люди в России начали...
Does that mean that people in Russia have begun putting two and two together and see a link now between the invasion of Ukraine and their problems today, or not?
Это хороший и справедливый вопрос.
It's a good and fair question. Imagine a complex system like a bridge held up by cables. In order to understand which cables have weakened, which ones have frayed, there's a system of sensors. And everyone can see, a red light has come on. That means that particular cable needs replacing to prevent the bridge from collapsing. So what kind of sensors are there in Russian society? Almost all non-state media outlets have shut.
Лидеры общественного мнения объявлены врагами государства.
Most opinion leaders have been declared enemies of the state, foreign agents, extremists, or terrorists. Several hundred of them. Messengers and social media platforms have been shut down. Rallies have been banned. Do you know why? You live in Moscow. Why aren't you wearing a mask? Go on. Why aren't you wearing a mask? We have COVID here.
Где?
Where?
В Москве в связи с ковидными
In
ограничениями
Moscow, due to COVID restrictions, all rallies and demonstrations are banned. And you are not wearing a mask? Perhaps you didn't know we had COVID here. Well, I'm telling you, we are being denied permission to hold mass events due to COVID restrictions.
в связи с ковидными ограничениями. Репрессии, политические репрессии в отношении свободы слова.
There are repressions, political repressions against freedom of speech, against elections, against the rights of citizens to hold mass events, to such an extent that we don't know what the real public mood is.
Мы часто говорим о путинской России.
But we often talk about Putin's Russia or Putin's political system over the 26 years that Putin has been in power. And we often talk about Putin as an all-powerful leader. Is that true? Who's running the country?
Ну, так ли это? То есть кто руководит страной?
Вот, извините, я не верю.
Of course. Sorry, I don't believe all this talk about a split among members of the elite, about secret conspiracies. The country is run by Vladimir Putin. They are frightened of him. And this fear is reinforced in every way by his main support base, his core electorate. That's the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. The FSB is the parties, the parliament, and the government all in one. The unique thing about the way the FSB rules is that they come up with solutions but bear no responsibility for the consequences.
А в какой момент это случилось?
When did this happen?
Я думаю, что постепенно.
I think it happened gradually, but it accelerated 6 or 7 years ago.
6-7 лет назад.
Я понимаю, что вы журналист, вы не психолог.
I understand that you're a journalist, you're not a psychologist, and it's hard to get into someone else's head. But how far do you think Vladimir Putin is prepared to go to win in Ukraine? And how does he interpret victory?
Значит, понимаете,
Understand this.
победы уже никогда не будет.
There will never be victory.
Потому что то, что происходит почти 5 лет,
Because what has been going on for almost 5 years, no matter how it ends, can no longer be considered a victory. It can't be a victory when 2 Slavic nations have ripped 1 million people to shreds, or more than 1 million.
скажите, пожалуйста, если в мире идея,
Please tell me, is there any idea in the world worth ripping to shreds 1 million people in the center of Europe?
может ли победить власть, у которой безлимитный тариф на потери?
Can a government with no upper limit on losses actually win?
Мне кажется, что с Украиной сейчас ситуация такая.
It seems to me that the situation with Ukraine now is this.
Уничтожить можно, завоевать нельзя.
You can destroy it, but you cannot conquer it. What do I mean by destroy? Continued escalation all the way to nuclear war. I don't know what's going on in Putin's head. All those political experts who say, Putin thinks this, Putin is scared of that, Putin must have decided so and so. They're all charlatans. That's in the same league as astrology. Nobody knows what's going on in Vladimir Putin's head. And I don't know. I see things only as a journalist. I study big data. And since the beginning of the year, the need to use nuclear weapons has been mentioned over 500 times.
А что вас
And what has shocked you most over the last 4.5 years?
привычка к потерям.
That people have got used to the losses, that now a human life counts for nothing, that a life can be disregarded, that the cemeteries are filling up here and there, that people have disappeared from the center of politics, from the center of any processes, that policy is no longer about them. I don't understand it. I repeat, what idea is worth people being torn to shreds? Hundreds of thousands of people, 1 million already for sure, wounded and killed on both sides. For what? I just don't get it.
А вот если бы Владимир Путин...
But if Vladimir Putin was sitting here, he would probably say that during this time, Russia has become a sovereign country. Because you hear the word sovereignty everywhere, every day now.
Смотрите, слово суверенитет и слово безопасность — это два новых.
Look, the word sovereignty and the word security are two new gods. These are not political terms in Russia. They are two religions, the religion of sovereignty and the religion of security. What is sovereignty? It's quite an old concept. It dates back to the 16th century. It means that the government can do what it wants to do. Yes, but there is a constitution that says that the source of that power is the people. Did anyone ask the people about 1 million people dying? Did anyone ask the people whether or not to send in troops? You see? The second religion is security. Go on, tell me, has it increased? Has security increased? With the Wildberries warehouses being attacked by Ukrainian drones, the petrol crisis, disrupted mobile internet communications, the political prisoners.
И меня беспокоит сейчас больше всего, что никому в мире нет дела до
And what worries
политических
me most
заключенных.
right now is that no one in the world has any interest in the political prisoners who were the first to speak out against the land grab in our neighboring country. 2 years have passed since the last prisoner release, when several civilians were freed, including Vladimir Kara-Murza, Oleg Orlov and Ilya Yashin.
Илья Яшин, да? Ни один.
Not a single political prisoner has been released since. There are no negotiations.
Это наши коллеги-журналисты.
These are our fellow journalists. Camera operator Antonina Favorskaya is in a prison camp in Kostroma. This is what the once round-faced Alexei Gorinov has become. A local lawmaker, a Moscow municipal deputy. Alexei Gorinov is behind bars. This is what he's turned into. Everyone keeps telling me, you know, now is not the right time to talk about them. Well, okay, so when is the right time? How much time does Nadezhda Buyanova have? She's a doctor, a pediatrician from Moscow. She was charged after someone reported on her to the authorities. She's 70 years old. She's in prison in a penal colony in Kostroma. She's still treating people there.
О, это Барышников.
Oh, that's Igor Baryshnikov from Kaliningrad, an engineer, a smart guy. They didn't let him go to his mother's funeral, but he has cancer.
Пианист выдающийся.
Here is a wonderful pianist, an outstanding performer of Rachmaninoff and Schubert, Pavel Kushnir, and that's him in his coffin.
А сколько?
How many political prisoners are there in Russia?
Есть разные подсчеты, я скажу вам субъективно.
There are different estimates. I'll give you my subjective figure. Over 1,500 people, such as Yevgenia Berkovich and Svetlana Petrichuk, who have already served more than half their sentences. In my opinion, they are outstanding theater figures of a European level, a director and playwright.
А как насчет отношения к независимым СМИ?
And what about the attitude towards independent media? We're sitting in the editorial offices of one of the most famous independent Russian newspapers, Novaya Gazeta, which you helped create, a newspaper that wrote quite critically about the government.
Газеты нет? Но у газеты
There is no newspaper anymore. The newspapers' printing houses were nationalized.
национализировали указом Путина отдельно.
Putin issued a decree, and the newspapers' printing presses were nationalized, and the website's registration was revoked. By and large, we are, of course, no longer a media outlet. Do we still have readers? Well, yes, we try to make sure we still have readers. I don't want to go into that. Only recently, barely 3 months have passed, early April, May, since we were raided. I love this photo. The raid lasted 13 hours, and they didn't let our lawyers in.
Это стоит наш адвокат Катя Тертухина и ждет, когда кончится.
This is our lawyer, Katya Tertukhina, standing there waiting for the search to end. Our deputy editor, Oleg Raldugin, is currently under house arrest. We've had 12 people called in for questioning in the last week.
Продолжаются в отношении нас подобные меры.
These are the kinds of measures against us that continue, but compared to what's happening to people on the battlefield, compared to what's happening with the nighttime shelling of cities, we're not complaining about anything. We're just reporting on it, not complaining. That's our position.
Вот в чем наша позиция.
Вот этот обыск 13-часовой.
What does that police raid, that 13-hour raid, say about the situation in the country?
Ну, послушайте,
I've actually answered that question. I believe there are rules in place by which those who support the special military operation can do anything they want, and those who are against it are not even worthy of legal guarantees.
Дмитрий, у меня просто один вопрос остался.
Dmitry, I just have one question left, a slightly different one. What helps you during these difficult times? Is it talking to friends, or books, or music?
Да, мы живем в молчащее время.
We live in a time where people stay silent, but many people do support what we do. In Moscow, on the streets of Moscow, my colleagues and I hear only words of gratitude. They are spoken in a whisper, but what people think is very important.
Но очень важно, что люди думают.